Good morning, St. Francis. Good morning, people of God. It is Friday, the 19th day of April, 2024. It is Friday of the third week of Easter. It is the 20th day of the Easter season. And as we said at morning prayer this morning at the Franciscan School, Taylor Swift has unleashed not only an album, but a double album today. Hooray for all Swifties out there. Anyway, okay, so it is also National Garlic Day. So for everyone who loves garlic, eat some garlic today. Let's see, today, in the readings for Friday of the third week of Easter, Saul, we hear the great narrative of Saul's conversion. Breathing murderous threats, he sets out for Damascus, and on that way is knocked from his horse by a voice that says, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And that begins the great upheaval of Saul's life, which will eventually transform him into Paul, the greatest of all the missionary apostles in ancient Christianity. And they should go through the entire saga of him going to the house of Ananias and staying there, learning about Christ, being blinded by this encounter, and after he realizes that he is now God's chosen instrument, as he is told, these things like scales fall from his eyes. So again, what had stopped him from being able to see truly, the Messiah is now revealed to him. Again, the great story about Paul, is that, again, what God takes as seemingly antithetical or contradictory or totally different than what God would choose or God would think would be valuable and important for continuing the mission begun by Christ, all of a sudden becomes the perfect vessel for God to be able to use to allow the message of Christianity to move beyond Israel, the Holy Land, Palestine, and into the Mediterranean and into the known world of that part of the world at that time. Again, what does this say about us? We are never unusable, or we are never lost to the point where God would abandon us, or God would think that we are no longer of use, or God would try to get rid of us or push us aside and push us to the margins. We do that all the time. We push people aside, push them to the margins when we think they are of no use to us, or we don't think that they can be useful, they can benefit us, what have you. God sees more deeply, and God asks us to do the same, basically. Again, this is where you get hiring practices, who gets into what schools, who gets, what merits, who gets what this and that, the other thing. It's all basically surface. It's always surface. And that's, again, how we operate as human beings, because we can't move deeper, we think. And yet God does give us the ability, to look more deeply into each other's lives and to try to understand that. That's the whole call of mercy in the gospel that Jesus preaches again and again and again. It's not to pity people, it's not to feel sorry for them, but it's to try to understand them as best we can for why they do what they do, who they are, which is beyond their successes and their failures and whatever it is, to get to the deeper heart of who these individuals are. Christ shows us a way and be able to do that. God does this all the time, and we are asked to imitate this as best as we can. And so this great story of Saul, who becomes Paul, a persecutor of Christianity, a violent persecutor of Christianity, and now someone who becomes its greatest champion. It can be done to anyone. It can happen to any one of us. And again, the Easter season opens up the possibilities and the potentials for what it is that we're called to be, for who it is that we're called to be in this world as believers, as children of God, as sons and daughters of God, as brothers and sisters of Christ. In the gospel today, again, we continue John's Bread of Life discourse, which again we will hear over the summer months. This is the year of Mark, and Mark is not long enough a gospel to take on all of the Sundays in a year, and so it has to be added to supplemented with the Gospel of John. But the Bread of Life discourse, again, here the Jewish people at this point are really disgusted by what Jesus is saying. To eat and drink his body and his blood. It's not good. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound right. And so they are incredulous for all of this, and they disbelieve. But again, Jesus tries to basically say, again, about true eating and drinking. Again, we eat and drink to survive. We eat and drink to continue to live. And sometimes eating and drinking can become violent and messy, especially when we think that our eating and our drinking is threatened by anybody else. And then eating and drinking becomes competition. And there are those who survive and those who do not. That is not what we are supposed to do as human beings. That is not the call of humanity, is to fight for survival. It is to recognize that each other's survival is dependent upon each other, and no more and no less than that. So to be able to eat and drink this true food that comes from Christ is meant to open our hearts and our minds to what we are truly called to be for and to each other, as creations of God, to make sure that, again, if not all of us survive, then none of us survives. This is why, again, this bread and this wine, this body and this blood, this Christ that we eat and drink, is not just to get us into heaven. It is for us to live here and now on this earth, and to live as fully and as more appropriately as we need to be, as again, people of faith and belief in the world, people who recognize this great relationship that we have with God, a relationship that is made more clear and more brilliant, more vibrant, more wonderful, more beautiful with the resurrection of Christ. Blessed Easter continues, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.